5 frugal things that I do to spend less so I could save more. And I definitely save the most amount of money with number 5. I would consider myself to be pretty frugal and have a hard time spending money in general. And it's very hard to spend money because it emotionally hurts me to spend that. So if there's any way I could spend less by doing something that requires a few extra steps, or buy something cheaper without sacrificing on quality, or if I could just prevent myself from buying things that I don't necessarily need, then I'm gonna take that route so I could try to spend the least amount of money as I can. The first thing that I like to do is to spend less is not getting drinks at the restaurant. And unless I'm going specifically to a bar to go drinking, then I won't be getting any drinks other than free water. And yes, I'm that type of dude that gets free water cups at Chipotle, but I'm not one of those people who also get soda with that.
I mean, I could be shameless, but not that shameless.
Because if I go out to eat, the price of food alone is anywhere from $15 to $20. So I find it crazy that the fountain drinks could be an additional $3 to $5 that probably costs a few cents to make. So I actually got curious on how much soda costs for these restaurants. So I did some research, and it seems like the costs of fountain drinks are usually 10 to 20% of its price, or more simply, a penny an ounce for syrup, water, and CO2. So a 22 fluid ounce soda from Chipotle costs $3.43. And if it's 1 cent per fluid ounce, then it costs 22 cents to make, which is almost a 94% profit margin, which is pretty crazy. And I totally understand that restaurants need to upcharge to make money, but for me, it's definitely not worth it. And this is not to mention alcohols could be anywhere from $8 to $20 a drink, especially if you're in the city. And I decided to just choose a random restaurant / bar with $2 signs on the Google Maps. And mixed drinks cost $17 a pop there. So if you end up getting 2 drinks with burger, let's say, you end up spending around $38, including tax and tip, just for those drinks. So I don't think drinks are really worth it because the extra cost doesn't cover the extra margin of value. Now, the second thing that I do to spend less is to cut my own hair. And this probably explains why my hair is messed up sometimes in videos, especially in the back where it's a little bit harder for me to see. But I've been cutting my hair for around 13 years. And I first started because I will pay around $10 to $15 to get a haircut. And the barbers would always mess up my hair. So one day I thought, I'll rather mess up my own hair for free than have to pay for someone else to mess it up. And I still remember I told this barber that I only want an inch off of the front, but they ended up cutting to an inch. So obviously I have to close my eyes while they're cutting the front. I could feel them cutting a big chunk of it. And I remember thinking,
boy, that's a lot more than I asked for.
And I ended up hating the haircut, but I still ended up paying this full amount. And I recently had a wedding a few months ago, and my wife insisted that I get a haircut done professionally, which I agree that is worth doing because it will be bad if I see a photo and I see a patch of hair in the back that I totally missed. So we ended up going to a barbershop, and I ended up paying $40 for a haircut and probably came out to around $50 with tip. And sure, the haircut was cleaner and more presentable, and my wife and my family ended up liking it better. But for me, it's only worth paying that much for a big event like this. But I can't imagine how people pay for this amount every month, even if I have to live with missing a spot here and there sometimes for my own haircuts. And in terms of how much I probably saved, let's say I ended up saving around $25 on average every month for the last 13 years. I saved a total of $3,900 with a $50 hair clipper. And it took me a few trial and errors to really figure out how to use, but saving that amount is really not that bad. So if you're enjoying the content so far, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more personal finance videos just like this one. And the third way I look to spend less money on items is buy generic brands as opposed to buying name brand items, especially if I know that the content of the product is pretty much the same. And I typically do this for the over-the-counter pharmaceutical drugs, ever since a pharmacist told me that generic drugs and name brand drugs are pretty much the same, but you're just paying a premium for the name on the package. And I'm not saying you're gonna be saving thousands of dollars on this, but you could be saving anywhere from 10 to 20% every time you're at the drugstore. And they say that on average, generic drugs cost 80 to 85% less than name brand drugs, but I think this is accounted for the more expensive ones. So 500 milligrams of Tylenol for 100 pills costs $12.99, while 500 milligrams of generic acetaminophen for the same 100 pills is $10.49, which comes out to 20% cheaper for the same product with the same active ingredients. And this is the same for the cold and flu medicine. So 12 ounces of Vicks NyQuil is $16.99, while the 12 ounces of the same but CVS version costs $13.99, which is 18% cheaper compared to the one from Vicks. So again, the active ingredients are the same thing, but you're just paying a little bit more for the name brand Vicks. Now, the fourth thing I do to save money is called the 24-hour rule, where I wait at least 24 hours to purchase something online to see if I really want it and still want it a day later. So I save money by preventing myself from spending it in the first place. But Amazon nowadays makes it too easy to purchase something and then get it within a day or two. So before you really have the chance to decide whether you need it, you've already bought it. And Amazon also makes it super easy to return, so you might even convince yourself that you could always return it if you don't want it. That's obviously a lie. Because I cannot tell you how often I end up buying an item that I don't even end up using, and I'm too lazy to return it, so they just end up collecting dust at my house. Like this bike lock and this plastic thing that covers my windows during the winter time, like they're still literally in the package, and I haven't even opened this yet. And bro, I don't even have a bike anymore. But with the 24-hour rule, I end up adding things to my cart and then I click save for later so I could have a list of items that I might need or want later, which means I don't have to go searching for them again. But most of the time I end up just forgetting about it, so I don't have to go through the hassle of returning it later if I don't end up using it. Now, the fifth way that I spend less is by shopping around for large purchases, which basically means that if I know that I want something for sure, but it costs, let's say, over $300, then I'll take the extra effort to shop around for pricing, but also to see who provides the most value for the product or service, which means that I'm not necessarily looking for the cheapest thing either at this point. Because I would rather spend 10% more or a few $100s more if I know that the vendor is better or has better reviews, or the product itself is made up of better quality material. Like, I don't think it's worth calling a bunch of places for an hour or two just to save a few bucks or 10 bucks at most. But if I know that it'll save me a few $100s, then it's definitely worth the time to shop around. An example of this was when I was shopping around for mortgage rates, and it probably took me around 3 to 4 hours in the span of 3 weeks because I was looking to lock in a 30-year fixed mortgage rate. And I got quotes around the high 6% in terms of the average. And I was getting anywhere from 6.5 to 6.75% even with the high credit score of 800. And one place ended up giving me a quote for 5.875. And I ended up locking that one in. And even though at face value, it may not seem like it's much, comparing 6.75 with the 5.875%, it makes a pretty big difference at the end of the day. So for a $575,000 loan at a 6.75% interest rate, I'll be spending $3,729 for the mortgage alone, excluding any taxes and insurance. While with a 5.875 interest rate, I'll be spending $3,401 for my mortgage. And that is a difference of $328 per month. And if you multiply this out by 12 months out of the year for 30 years, that comes out to $118,000. And if I double check the math with the mortgage calculator, I'll be spending $760,000 in total interest for the 6.75% interest rate. While for the 5.875%, I'll be paying a total of $643,000, which basically comes out to around $120,000 saved for those 4 hours of phone calls, or $30,000 per hour. Honestly, pretty crazy to think about. And I love when I'm able to save money like this because this is helping me to get closer to my financial goals. And the more money I could save, the more money I could throw into my investment accounts and my savings account. But sometimes it feels like money just disappears out of thin air. So as a bonus for watching this video, I created a stress-free budget template that you could access free down in the description below, so you know exactly how much you spend and save every month. And the reason why I'm frugal is because I'm looking to achieve financial freedom through the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. But there are some things that I do not like about the FIRE movement and completely disagree with. And these things took me a little too long to figure out, and I'll talk about those 3 things in this video. So make sure you check out that next, and I'll see you guys there.